Today we're going back into the comments section to talk about some great comments that you all have left this year so far. Welcome to Comic Misconceptions, I'm Scott, and we've only been going for a short time this year, but already you guys have posted some amazing comments. And every few months, I like to highlight some of my favorite comments that you've left. These aren't compliments, although those are always appreciated, but rather they are comments that expand upon ideas from videos, as well as ask some good questions that encourage me to do a bit more follow-up research. And as always, I apologize for all of the names that I will definitely mispronounce. With that said, let's get right to it. On the episode discussing why Lex Luthor is bald, I had a ton of you guys commenting about how you always had thought Lex lost his hair because of cancer or kryptonite radiation poisoning. So, after doing some research, here is what I found. In Superman #2 from 1987, Lex was shown wearing a kryptonite ring that he had made to protect himself in the presence of Superman. He would wear this ring day in and day out as a precaution, since kryptonite radiation is harmful to supes, but harmless to humans, at least that's what Lex thought. As it turns out, after a few months of wearing the ring non-stop, Lex's hand had absorbed so much kryptonite radiation that it actually needed to be amputated and replaced with a robot hand. Then a bunch of other confusing stuff happens that I won't get into that involves Lex faking his own death, some stuff about evil clones, and deals with demons. It's really not important right now. But I did want to note that a similar thing happened in the Justice League cartoon in a two-part episode called Injustice for All, where Lex was diagnosed with blood poisoning due to kryptonite radiation as well, thanks to a fragment that he had been carrying around for years. Either way, there's nothing that I could find that directly links Lex's kryptonite poisoning with his hair loss. As you can see in the comics, at least, he was already bald before he started wearing the ring that would poison him. So as far as my research goes, Lex didn't become bald due to overexposure to kryptonite. However, as with everything, I could be absolutely wrong. And there could easily be a comic that I didn't have access to, that I passed up. So if you guys know any sources that specifically say Lex lost his hair this way, then please let me know in the comments. Still on the topic of Lex Luthor, I'd mentioned in the episode that Lex used to have hair but was first portrayed bald in the comics because artist Leo Nowak confused him with a bald henchman from an earlier Superman comic. Rob Morris and a few others commented about another person that Lex could have been confused with: ultra-humanite. If you are unfamiliar, ultra-humanite is actually one of the first supervillains in comics history and was Superman's original archenemy before Lex came into the picture. He's a super genius inhabiting the body of an albino ape, so how could Lex Luthor accidentally be confused for him? Well, ultra-humanite wasn't always an ape. He first looked like this, a bald human scientist, and he would later transfer his consciousness to a mutant gorilla, which would become his most notable form over the years. The story goes that it was this original incarnation of the character that Leo Nowak confused with Lex Luthor when he was drawing Superman comics, and not the bald henchman that I had mentioned earlier. Rob Morris even goes on to provide sources to where he had heard this story, which is always the best thing that anyone can do. He points me to a book that I went and bought off of Amazon called Superman from the 30s to the 70s. The introduction was written by E. Nelson Bridewell and apparently holds our answer. But as I read through it, I couldn't really find any mention of ultra-humanite being the unintentional inspiration for Luthor. I did, however, find a section that does reinforce the idea that Lex was mixed up with that bald henchman from Superman #4, so even though it wasn't your intention, Rob, you did help find yet another source for the original video, which is awesome. But if any of you know any reliable source that points to Luthor being based on the Golden Age ultra-humanite, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to get to the bottom of this one permanently. In the latest tie-in video about whether or not Batman truly remembers the murder of his parents, we talked about how memory works, and it's that you're physically changing the memories every time you recall them. So your memories of an event slightly change the more you think about them. Alessandro Castellani and a few others give this theory that we as an audience have never actually seen the actual Wayne murders, and each time it shows up in the comics and movies and shows, we are only viewing one of Bruce's altered memories of the event. And that's why little changes happen between the flashbacks, like with what his parents said or wore, stuff like that. I absolutely love this idea, and I accept it into my headcanon. There is no one true interpretation of that night that we've seen yet, because we're always viewing it through the mind of Batman or Gordon or somebody else who's remembering it, whether it's explicitly stated or not. I like it. You all left some really great comments on last week's video about Superman's new super flare power as well. Dale from Monarch's Factory points out that the ideas in the episode reminded her of Rick Altman's theory of film genre, which genre theory is something that I find so interesting that I would probably want to make a video about someday if I can find a way to relate it to comics. But right under that comment is, in the same thread, is Luke Slater, who gives us a quote from Douglas Adams, who famously wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The quote relates to shifting baselines, specifically technology, and it's great. great. He says, quote, "I've come up with a set of rules that describe our reactions to technologies. Number one, anything that is in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way the world works. Number two, anything that is invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it. Number three, anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things." That first rule is probably the clearest way to understand the concept of shifting baselines. Those, thank you so much for this comment and this quote. Still on that same Superman episode, I had mentioned that the Fleischer Studios Superman cartoons were the first place that Superman officially gained the power of flight, and I'd gotten that little bit of info from Brian Cronin's book, Was Superman a Spy?, which is on the shelf back here, and he's an author that I quote a lot on the show. In the book, Cronin writes, quote, "The Adventures of Superman radio show had a notable tagline describing Superman as faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and able to leap tall buildings in a single bound." Note that last part, leap, not fly. In his early appearances, Superman could not fly. He goes on to explain about the Fleischer Studios films, quote, "To animate Superman jumping, however, required extra frames to be drawn of Superman crouching down and then leaping forward. A way to avoid drawing these frames was to simply take the frame with Superman standing and move it slowly over the background, which would make it appear as though he was flying off the ground." Cronin then ends by saying that the popularity of these films led to Superman flying in the comics and that his flight became a standard power of the character ever since. However, Badre Bali and Scott Harris pointed out that it was the radio program that first had the Man of Steel fly, specifically the second episode wherein the announcer says that Superman wheels and turns in curious flight, and in one of the characters in the show also says that he flew down to save them. This episode came out in 1940, which is at least 1 year before the Fleischer films. So I emailed Brian Cronin to ask him about this. Usually he gets back pretty quickly, so if I hear anything soon, I'll try to do a tie-in video to go over his response. But as far as I can tell, you're correct. I think the radio show is pretty clear that Superman could indeed fly. And actually, I really would like to do a full video about the importance of that radio show. That's something that I've wanted to do for a while now, so maybe. Lastly, I want to end on a comment from Incan TV on the history of the Comics Code Authority video, where I asked if censorship might actually be beneficial in certain scenarios. And they said that a really talented creator would see censorship as a challenge and not a limitation. And I absolutely 100% agree with this. Wonderful comment. Thank you very much. And that's all the time we have for this video of comment responses. My friend gave me the idea of calling these types of episodes comments misconceptions. So I guess that's what we're doing from now on. Just keep leaving the great comments, guys. You can find all the ones that I mentioned linked in the description below if you want to go check them out and add your thoughts into the mix as well. And if this is your first time hanging out with us here at NerdSync, we do weekly comic book videos that expand your understanding and enrich your comic book reading experience. And hit that big sexy subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. Once again, I'm Scott. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll see you right here next time for more things I thought you knew about comics. See ya.